LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the January 26th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you like what I'm doing here tonight. This was the week that we really heard a strong argument for why Trump must be removed, and I will be playing that clip as my second clip after the clip of Jon Lovitz on Saturday Night Live last night playing Alan Dershowitz. Two of the 12 best, most newsworthy clips that I picked out. The rest come from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be a really educational, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all tonight. Down in the video description, you can see my clip list that has that clip 1 and clip 2 I was just talking about. And clip 2, like I said, is the long Adam Schiff argument as to why Trump must be removed. You will be able to compare that to, or the Jon Lovitz clip is clip 1, which you'll be able to compare to Alan Dershowitz as clip number 8. But my topic this week is remove Trump, which is something that there's a very little chance of actually happening through the impeachment trial, but it's an important argument to make as to why Trump should be removed. And if you've been reading my video description for the last few weeks, I've been describing why Trump should be removed, what the impeachable offense is, how he used military aid to Ukraine in a White House meeting, and other ways that he could have showed support for the new Ukrainian president as leverage to get him to do investigations into the Bidens and into this debunk Crowdstrike conspiracy theory about who hacked the DNC server back in 2016. And if you've been reading that video description for the last few weeks, you'll notice the last couple sentences I have are Republicans falling into a trap if they exonerate Trump too quickly in the Senate before further facts come out making Trump's guilt even clearer. Trump could lose in the courts and in public opinion in 2020, even if he wins in the Senate trial. And there's breaking news this week, just Sunday night here, after all the news analysis shows, about how John Bolton has been circulating a draft of his book where he says that in August Trump was specifically linking his hold on military aid to Ukraine to the investigations that he wanted into Democrats. So I think that really backs up what I've been saying for a long time. But I want to get to the clips, and like I said, I'm going to start with Jon Lovitz playing Alan Dershowitz. I don't think it was really that funny. I think it would have been funnier if Jon Lovitz had played Alan Dershowitz as his old Tommy Flanagan, the liar character. I would have liked to hear him at one point say, my wife Morgan Fairchild, or that never came up. And it wasn't an Alan Dershowitz impression. It really, anyway, here's where first they have Beck Bennett playing Mitch McConnell and Cicely Strong playing Susan Collins of Maine. And that was kind of funny at the beginning, but then Alan Dershowitz shows up in the minute and a half clip I will talk about with you after we watch it together over here.
Yes, hello everyone, it's I, Alan Dershowitz. It's wonderful to be here, because I'm not welcome anywhere else. There's a lot of haters out there for no good reason. But like I said to my client and my dear friend, Jeffrey Epstein, haters gonna hate.
Yeah, Alan, I think you're going to want to stay away from Epstein.
Oh, right, good point. All right, let me try again. Now, members of the Senate, President Trump is a lot like another client of mine, Sir O.J. Simpson.
Alan.
Yes?
Could you not mention your previous clients in connection with the president? It's not a great look.
Oh, hey, it's not a great look. It's printed on my business cards.
Alan.
Okay, I digress. Now, where was I? Yes. If I learned one thing from my time with accused wife murderer Klaus von Bülow, It's that appearances can be deceiving. Trump couldn't possibly be guilty because... Oh.
Alan?
Alan, are you
Oh, my
okay?
God, my heart!
And you can see there's Kate McKinnon as the devil when Alan Dershowitz goes down to hell. And down in the video description, you can watch that entire Saturday Night Live cold open by clicking on the link to their free YouTube channel. I put links to all the sources of my clips down in the video description. Like I said, I didn't think that was that funny. And the criticisms, you know, the satirical criticisms of Dershowitz there about the previous clients that he's represented. I talked about that last week, as I don't think criminal defense attorneys should be smeared with who they represent, because representing clients, even despicable clients, is important if you are interested in fulfilling the U.S. Constitution, specifically the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. Now, I used to be a criminal defense attorney, a public defender, where I would take clients who couldn't afford an attorney, and basically if they were on the docket the day that it was my turn, I would take those clients. And that is, I think, a little more noble than what Alan Dershowitz does with some of his, you know, the OJ and the Klaus von Bülow and Jeffrey Epstein, that he was a paid criminal defense attorney, and so he could choose his clients, unlike public defenders. But anyway, I talked a lot about Alan Dershowitz last week, and like I said, I will be showing one more clip of Alan Dershowitz on Fox News Sunday later. I'm also going to show a clip of George Conway later, the husband of Kellyanne Conway. That's pretty interesting if you're following along on the clip list. That's clip number 7. But like I said, for those people who don't think that Trump should be removed, I was really impressed with Adam Schiff's performance this week, and specifically his closing argument, not at the end of the Democrats' case on Friday, but on Thursday night. There's a long 30-minute speech. I'm not going to show all of it. If you want to see the best response to Trump's claim that we should read the transcript, it's at the beginning of that speech. And I didn't have time when I was doing this live stream, but for the recorded viewers, the recorded show viewers, I will put a link down to C-SPAN where you can look for trial day 4 and get the rest of this video. But here's the last 8.5 minutes from Adam Schiff, where he not only talks about, you know, the transcript and why Trump is guilty, but just now that we've proven that he's guilty, why must he be removed? And like I said, 8.5 minutes. I've been watching C-SPAN in Congress for decades, and this is one of the best congressional speeches I have ever seen, which is why I decided to show you. I almost decided to show you the whole half hour, but here's the last 8.5 minutes, not the guilt part, but why Trump must be removed. And Remove Trump is the title of my video, based on this strong argument from Adam Schiff this week that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
When we're done, we believe that we will have made the case overwhelmingly of the president's guilt. That is, he's done what he's charged with. He withheld the money, he withheld the meeting, he used it to coerce Ukraine to do these political investigations, he covered it up, he obstructed us, he's trying to obstruct you, and he's violated the Constitution. But I want to address one other thing tonight. Okay, he's guilty. Okay, he's guilty. Does he really need to be removed? Does he really need to be removed? We have an election coming up. Does he really need to be removed? He's guilty. You know, is there really any doubt about this? I mean, do we really have any doubt about the facts here? Does anybody really question whether the president is capable of what he's charged with? No one is really making the argument Donald Trump would never do such a thing. Because of course we know that he would, and of course we know that he did. It's a somewhat different question, though, to ask, okay, It's pretty obvious, whether we can say it publicly or we can't say it publicly. We all know what we're dealing here with this president. But does he really need to be removed? And this is why he needs to be removed. Donald Trump chose Rudy Giuliani over his own intelligence agencies. He chose Rudy Giuliani over his own FBI director. He chose Rudy Giuliani over his own national security advisors. When all of them were telling him this Ukraine 2016 stuff is kooky, crazy Russian propaganda, he chose not to believe them. He chose to believe Rudy Giuliani. That makes him dangerous to us, to our country. That was Donald Trump's choice. Now, why would Donald Trump believe a man like Rudy Giuliani over a man like Christopher Wray? Okay? Why would anyone in their right mind believe Rudy Giuliani over Christopher Wray? Because he wanted to, and because what Rudy was offering him was something that would help him personally. And what Christopher Wray was offering him was merely the truth. What Christopher Wray was offering him was merely the information he needed to protect his country and its elections. But that's not good enough. What's in it for him? What's in it for Donald Trump? This is why he needs to be removed. Now, you may be asking, how much damage can he really do in the next several months until the election? A lot. A lot of damage. Now, we just saw last week a report that Russia tried to hack, or maybe did hack, Burisma. Okay? I don't know if they got in. I'm trying to find out. My colleagues on the Intel Committee, House and Senate, we're trying to find out, did the Russians get in? What are the Russian plans and intentions? Well, let's say they got in. And let's say they start dumping documents to interfere in the next election. Let's say they start dumping some real things they hacked from Burisma. Let's say they start dumping some fake things they didn't hack from Burisma, but they want you to believe they did. Let's say they start blatantly interfering in our election again to help Donald Trump. Can you have the least bit of confidence that Donald Trump will stand up to them and protect our national interest over his own personal interest? You know you can't, which makes him dangerous to this country. You know you can't. You know you can't count on him. None of us can. None of us can. What happens if China got the message? Now, you can say, well, he's just joking. Of course, he didn't really mean China should investigate the Bidens. You know that's no joke. Now, maybe you could have argued 3 years ago when he said, hey, Russia, if you're listening, hack Hillary's emails. Maybe you could give him a freebie and say he was joking. But now we know better. Hours after he did that, Russia did, in fact, try to hack Hillary's emails. There's no mulligan here when it comes to our national security. So what if China does overtly or covertly start to help the Trump campaign? You think he's going to call him out on it? Or you think he's going to give him a better trade deal on it? Can any of us really have the confidence that Donald Trump will put his personal interests ahead of the national interest? Is there really any evidence in this presidency that should give us the ironclad confidence that he would do so? You know you can't count on him to do that. That's the sad truth. You know you can't count on him to do that. The American people deserve a president they can count on to put their interest first. To put their interest first. Colonel Vindman said, here right matters. Here right matters. Well, let me tell you something. If right doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how good the Constitution is. It doesn't matter how brilliant the framers were. It doesn't matter how good or bad our advocacy in this trial is. It doesn't matter how well written the oath of impartiality is. If right doesn't matter, we're lost. If the truth doesn't matter, we're lost. The framers couldn't protect us from ourselves if right and truth don't matter. And you know that what he did was not right. You know, that's what they do in the old country that Colonel Vindman's father came from, or the old country that my great-grandfather came from, or the old countries that your ancestors came from, or maybe you came from. But here, right is supposed to matter. It's what's made us the greatest nation on earth. No constitution can protect us. Right doesn't matter anymore. And you know you can't trust this president do what's right for this country. You can trust he will do what's right for Donald Trump. He'll do it now. He's done it before. He'll do it for the next several months. He'll do it in the election if he's allowed to. This is why, if you find him guilty, you must find that he should be removed. Because right matters. Because right matters. And the truth matters. Otherwise, we are lost.
Wow, I've watched every single second of this Senate impeachment trial from, the beginning where they just did the initial acceptance of the impeachment articles to the long arguments on Tuesday up till late at night about all the Schumer amendments as to whether they should admit witnesses and documents, and then the entire presentation of the House impeachment managers, and then the short presentation so far from the president's defense team on Saturday. I watched the whole thing, and when some of the time it's kind of boring, and it's definitely repetitive. They keep bringing stuff up. They keep bringing stuff up over and over again. It's different people at different times. They're playing to different audiences. I think like Jason Crow, who I'm the Colorado representative I'm going to show later, I think they might have chosen him so that they'd get more local Colorado news coverage to put pressure on Senator Cory Gardner from Colorado. So there are all sorts of weird things going on as to why they repeat things and why they say them at certain times, and it's all very political. But that speech is like a speech for the ages. That's, like I said before I showed it, that was one of the greatest speeches, and I've seen on the floor in Congress in all the years I've been watching Congress, which is several decades at this point. I'm sorry to say, at least 3 decades, maybe 4 decades. I don't know. Yeah, probably closer to 4. But one thing that was pretty sad about that is after I watched that live, and I went like, wow. I was watching that on, I think, MSNBC, and then I said, well, I wonder how they reacted to that over on Fox. And over on Fox News, they weren't even showing it. Like, this was around 7:30 to 8 p.m. at night where I am in California, so it's like 10:30 to 11, the end of prime time on the East Coast. And Fox News, they showed like Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham, and they showed like a minute of live coverage of what the Democrats were doing, and all the rest was, all their like conspiracy theories. It was pretty disappointing that they did not show the incredible speech from Adam Schiff, and you can let me know what you think down in the comment section about that. But now I want to get to the rest of the news clips, and one of the reasons I wanted to show that clip, well, one other thing I want to say about the difference between the House manager presentation and the quick presentation on Saturday from President Trump's defense team is, if you want to know who it is who is trying to show you the facts and who it is who's trying to hide evidence, I would like to compare. Here's a slide that the House managers showed where they used their yellow highlighter to show the part of the July 25th transcript, or it's not an actual transcript, it's a memorandum that's close to a transcript, but you see they highlight in yellow the part they want to talk about, but they show you the rest. That's not hiding evidence. Now here's how the president's defense team is showing you the part of the July 25th call transcript they want to show you. See, they put this larger version of the highlighted text in front of a blurred out version of the transcript, so you can't see what's back there. And by the way, what's missing right after this that they're not showing in the blurred out version is Trump saying, "I'd like you to do us a favor though." Of course, that's when, look at the way that they highlight text, and that tells you, I mean, not all you have to know, but it shows you an important point as to who's hiding evidence and who's not hiding evidence. And I wanted to show you the Adam Schiff clip because you'll see in these next news summaries I'm going to show you, Meet the Press actually does show some clips from the House manager's presentation as to why Trump is guilty of the 2 articles of impeachment and why he deserves to be removed. But you'll see the other 3 news summaries I'm going to show you from ABC, CNN, and Fox News. They talk briefly about what the Democratic House managers said, and then they show clips of what the president's defense team said. I don't know why there's such a concentration on the president's defense team, but that's not so much true in the NBC News Meet the Press news summary, which, as usual, is the longest and best news summary. And it includes Chuck Todd's live summary at the beginning about how what's going on with impeachment shows how divided we are as a country, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes to the pre-recorded package that includes Schiff talking about the need for a fair trial and a whole bunch of stuff about the Democrats and the Republicans and the impeachment trial, and even the breaking news about the Lev Parnas clip that I will talk about with you after we watch that 4-minute, 11-second news summary from NBC News' Meet the Press this morning over here.
Good Sunday morning. Even without impeachment, it was not hard last week to find examples of how divided as a country we have become. There was last Saturday's 4th annual Women's March here in Washington, inspired by opposition to President Trump. Then there was Monday's pro-gun rally in Richmond, Virginia, that's in the former capital of the Confederacy on the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And there was the annual anti-abortion March for Life on Friday, with Donald Trump making a first-ever appearance by a sitting American president. Then, for pure absurdity, there was the red-blue shoving match with Oklahoma banning state-funded travel to California after California did the same to Oklahoma. All this, of course, was the undercard to the main event, the first full week of President Trump's impeachment trial. Over 3 days, Democratic impeachment managers methodically laid out their case that President Trump abused power and obstructed Congress. But Democrats made that case needing at least 20 votes from Republican senators who seem as indifferent to their arguments as Democrats were passionate in making them. As the events around the country last week suggest, the Democratic-Republican stalemate on Capitol Hill was less a cause than a reflection of our national divide. And that divide may grow even wider, as it appears Republicans may bring a quicker end to the impeachment trial than Democrats want.
I implore you, give America
a fair trial.
House Democrats wrapped up 3 days of arguments, making the case that President Trump abused his power by pressuring Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 election for his personal gain.
You can't trust this president do what's right for this country. You can trust he will do what's right for Donald Trump.
President Trump tried to cheat. He got caught. And then he worked hard to cover it up.
He is a dictator.
Democrats are using the president's own words against him.
Then I have an Article 2 where I have the right to do whatever I want as president.
The attorney for indicted Giuliani associate Lev Parnas turned over cell phone video to the House Intelligence Committee, recorded by his associate Igor Fruman, who is also under indictment. It appears to show President Trump talking about removing Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Ivanovich, at an April 2018 dinner with donors.
Get rid of her. Hooray. Okay, get her out tomorrow. I don't care. Get her out tomorrow. Take her out. Okay? Excellent. Do it.
President Trump was asked about the recording on Friday.
But were you telling Parnas to get rid of her? I mean, you have a State Department.
Well, I wouldn't have been saying that. I probably would have said if it was Rudy there or somebody, I want ambassadors that are chosen by me.
On Saturday, the president's legal team fired back, making it clear they believe their strongest argument is not the facts, but the calendar.
They're asking you to remove President Trump from the ballot in an election that's occurring in approximately 9 months.
And echoing President Trump by raising doubts about the intelligence community, including the FBI.
The president had reason to be concerned about the information he was being provided.
What's not yet clear is just how aggressively they plan to target Joe Biden and his son.
They've gone after me, telling lies about me, my surviving son. They've gone after him. They've gone after my whole family.
Though large majorities of Americans believe the Senate should call new witnesses to testify, it's not clear Democrats will get the 4 Republican votes they need.
I'm afraid that's going to fail on its face. Maybe a couple Republican senators will dissent.
I think the House managers have done a good job of making their arguments, but that doesn't mean I will agree with them.
And some Senate Republicans are trying to deflect questions about the substance by dismissing it all as old news.
House Democrats repeat themselves time and time again.
There's nothing that I've heard so far that I didn't see before. I didn't hear anything new.
And joining me now is the House's lead impeachment manager, Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff. Chairman Schiff, welcome back to Meet the Press.
And I'm actually going to have a clip later of Adam Schiff responding to a question from Chuck Todd about things that he's done that may have created problems for the Democrats. Actually, I saw Donald Trump tweeted about how sleepy-eyed Chuck Todd didn't ask Adam Schiff or shifty Adam Schiff or whatever about the made-up words about the July 25th transcript. But actually, you'll see when I get to that clip, Chuck Todd does ask Adam Schiff both about the parody he made of the July 25th call transcript and also the thing that apparently Republicans were offended about on Friday, where he talked about the CBS report that a Trump aide had said that Republicans will find their heads on a pike if they vote in any way against Donald Trump. And that clip of Adam Schiff is clip number 11 of my 12 clips. But I want to show you a couple more news summaries. Like I said, that was a pretty good news summary from NBC News Meet the Press, although as I watched it that last time, you know, I watched my clips like 3 times. Once when I watch the shows, once when I'm capturing the clip to record it and show to you later, and then the third time I watch it while we're watching it together. And that last time it occurred to me that even the NBC News Meet the Press clip gives like 50-50 like both side-ism to the Democrats' argument and the Republicans' argument, even though in the last week, Democrats argued, I think they argued for 21, 22 of their 24 hours, and then Republicans argued for like 2 or 3 hours on Saturday. But even that news summary from Meet the Press gave about 50-50 to the arguments, and you'll see these next three news summaries actually play more clips of the Republicans than the Democrats, starting with the ABC News this week with George Stephanopoulos news summary, where you talk about where George Stephanopoulos starts off talking about how 5 days into the trial, there's scant evidence that any minds will be changed, and then talks about the House managers' arguments, but actually plays clips of the Republicans. So, like I said, gives actually more emphasis to what the Republican or to what the president's defense team said in 2 or 3 hours than the 21 plus hours of the Democrats over in this clip.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. 5 days into the trial of President Trump, there is scant evidence that any Senate minds have been changed. After a raucous debate over the rules, the House impeachment managers dedicated 3 days, some 21 hours, to their case that President Trump should be removed from office for abusing his power, obstructing Congress, often using the words of the president and his allies against him. But when Trump's team took the floor Saturday morning, White House counsel Pat Cipollone displayed his confidence by opening with an unequivocal declaration.
We believe that when you hear the facts, and that's what we intend to cover today, the facts, you will find that the president did absolutely nothing wrong.
And his summary of the Democrats' case.
They're asking you to tear up all of the ballots across this country on your own initiative. Take that decision away from the American people.
Let's bring in House Impeachment Manager Val Demings for a response this morning. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us.
Well, they brought in Val Demings, but WTF there? Why is it that the ABC News summary there showed 2 clips of Pat Cipollone and no clips of the Democrats? What kind of news summary of the week was that? When the Democrats argued for, like I said, was it 21, 22, 23 of their 24 hours of time, and they got no clips in the ABC News this week with George Stephanopoulos news summary. Whatever, that maybe I'm the only one outraged about that. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section, but you're going to see pretty similar treatment from CNN and Fox News in the next 2 news summaries I'm going to show you, which are both shorter. Well, actually, the Fox News summary is a little longer, but it's also more biased. But here's the CNN State of the Union news summary. Jake Tapper's back this week. And the State of the Union this week, if you're following along in the notes on my clip list, the State of the Union is wondering if they're going to find 4 Republican senators to vote for evidence, and then you'll see again a summary of what the Democrats said and actual clips of what the Republicans said, even on CNN over in this
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is wondering if 4 Republicans are going to vote for more evidence. President Trump's lawyers now have the floor, and tomorrow they will continue to hammer away at the charges brought by House Democrats in roughly 20 hours of opening arguments. On Saturday, the president's defense team argued he did, quote, absolutely nothing wrong, and said Democrats were trying to overturn the will of the American people.
They're asking you to remove President Trump from the ballot in an election that's occurring in approximately 9 months. They're here to perpetrate the most massive interference in an election in American history.
The president's lawyers promised that their arguments will be brief, which means the Senate could theoretically vote over whether to compel new witness testimony and new documents in just days. If 51 senators vote no, the president could theoretically be acquitted by the end of this week. Now, perhaps complicating that decision for senators is a tape just released by the lawyer of indicted businessman and Rudy Giuliani associate Lev Parnas, which shows that despite the president's claims, he spoke with Parnas about Ukraine and the U.S. ambassador there, whom President Trump later ousted, and knew this morning President Trump is weighing in on the proceedings, suggesting on Twitter that the lead House Democrat could pay a price for impeachment, writing, quote, "Shifty Adam Schiff is a corrupt politician and probably a very sick man. He has not paid the price yet for what he has done to our country," unquote. Joining me now, Republican Senator from Oklahoma.
And a little bit later, I'm going to, in clip 9, if you're following along at my clip list, at a link, you can look at my clip list at a link down in the video description. That's clip 9, where Jake Tapper asks James Lankford about that Adam Schiff, or that attack on Adam Schiff by our president, Donald Trump. You know, shifty Adam Schiff should pay a price, which, I don't know, that's a little bit ambiguous. Might not be a threat, but sounds kind of threatening. But before I get to that, I want to show you one more news summary and some other news clips, of course. But the last news summary comes from Fox News Sunday, where, just like you saw on ABC and CNN, like I said, they summarized what the Democrats said, and then they actually showed clips of what the Republicans said. I don't know what that was about. Actually, in this Fox News Sunday news summary, they show a clip of Adam Schiff, but not, you know, that amazing argument I showed you earlier. It was actually his response to what the president's defense team said on Saturday, and it was actually, his response was pretty good, but there's not much of it in this Fox News Sunday news summary, which I think really favors the president. And the one thing that I think is most egregious in terms of Fox News bias in this next clip is that Chris Wallace leads with this Fox News poll result as to whether Americans want more information or they've heard enough in the impeachment. And it's, what is it? Looking at my notes here, it's 48 to 44 in favor of where we've heard enough. But later, they definitely bury the lead from that poll, which comes later when Kevin Corke is doing his news reporting. The real lead from that poll is that the Fox News, that's right, Fox News poll is 50 to 44 Americans, 50% of Americans versus 44% of Americans want Trump removed from office. That's right, 50% of Americans in the Fox News poll want Trump removed from office versus 44% who do not. That's in this next clip that they bury, like it's a 3-minute clip almost, and it's like buried 2 minutes or so in, and they try to say, oh, but our Fox News poll had too many Democrats. And you'll see Kevin Corke tries to like mitigate the damage of this poll by saying, oh, but there were too many Democrats polled. And it's their own poll. They're like, you'll see Kevin Corke actually attacks his own poll in this final news summary, the Fox News Sunday news summary from Chris Wallace and then Kevin Corke over here.
You are looking live at the River Center in downtown Des Moines, the site of our town hall tonight on Fox News Channel with Mayor Pete Buttigieg. And hello again today from Iowa, just 8 days before the caucuses, where Americans will decide the first contest in the race for the 2020 Democratic nomination. The impeachment of President Trump is throwing some candidates a curveball, forcing the 4 senators in the race to stay in Washington for the Senate trial. Today, we have new Fox polls on impeachment and Democrats' push for witnesses. 48% of voters in our new nationwide survey say the Senate already has enough information, while 44% say more witness testimony is needed. In a moment, we'll speak with Alan Dershowitz, a member of the president's defense team. But first, let's bring in Kevin Corke with the latest from the White House. Kevin.
Chris, in a vigorous defense of the president, his legal team this week warned senators against removing him from office, less than 10 months before Americans vote on whether or not to give him a second term.
For all their talk about election interference, that they're here to perpetrate the most massive interference in an election in American history.
White House counsel Pat Cipollone, the head of the president's defense team, said Saturday that Democrats' effort to remove the president from office would set a very, very dangerous precedent in an election year.
Let the people decide for themselves. That's what the founders wanted. That's what we should all want.
But Democrats, in only the third presidential impeachment trial in U.S. history, argued that the president should be removed for encouraging Ukraine to interfere in the upcoming election by allegedly pressuring its leader to dig up dirt on leading Democratic contender, former Vice President Joe Biden.
They don't contest the basic architecture of the scheme. They do not contest that the president solicited a foreign nation to interfere in our election, to help him cheat.
Schiff's assertion comes as a newly revealed 2018 video appears to show the president at a donor event with two men at the center of the impeachment inquiry, talking about removing the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. This, as a majority of those in the latest Fox News survey say they believe the president should be removed from office, 50 to 44. That survey, 48 Democrats, 42 Republicans. By the way, sources tell Fox News it is highly unlikely the president's legal team will take as much time as the House did in mounting its defense. That means, Chris, we could see a vote on possible witnesses and perhaps even the articles themselves sometime late this week. Chris?
Kevin Corke reporting from the White House. Kevin, thank you. Joining us now, a member of the president's defense.
And I will have a clip from that Alan Dershowitz interview a little bit later, like I said, which you can compare to the Jon Lovitz impression that wasn't even close to really an impression of Alan Dershowitz, the first clip I showed you. But like I said before I showed that clip, it's pretty ridiculous that they buried the lead from their own poll, and you saw Kevin Corke there try to mitigate the poll by saying, you know, there was too high a percentage of Democrats versus Republicans in the poll that ended up being 50 to 44, saying that Trump should be removed from office. Remove Trump. Remove Trump. That is the title of my video, this week's LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Number 353 is Remove Trump. I showed you that 8.5-minute clip of Adam Schiff saying why Trump should be removed. We all know his character. He's trying to cheat in the 2020 election. He tried to cheat. He accepted the help of the Russians in 2016. Russia, if you're listening, the whole Roger Stone debacle, the Donald Trump Jr. Trump Tower meeting with the Russians to get dirt on Hillary. In 2016, he wanted the help of the Russians. He got the help of the Russians. And now he's asking Ukraine to dig up bogus dirt on his opponents for 2020. He's trying to get this some sort of evidence about this bogus conspiracy theory on that Ukrainians were involved through Crowdstrike and hacking the DNC server, so it wasn't really the Russians, so he didn't have an asterisk next to his 2016 election win, even though he also has an asterisk for not winning the popular vote. If you're interested in democracy, of course, our Constitution, if you read it, our Constitution, if you read it, does include an antiquated electoral college that gave us this bogus president that hopefully will be removed, not through this whole impeachment process. That's a very low probability outcome, but maybe because of all the evidence that comes out before the November 2020 election about what a terrible person, what a terrible president, and as Adam Schiff said, what a self-interested non-patriotic, public interested person as Donald Trump is, where he's put his personal interests in front of the national interests at every single, I mean, we all, as Adam Schiff said in that second clip I showed, we all know who Donald Trump is. We all know his character at this point, 3 years into his presidency. It's no mystery. We all know he did it. We all know he will do it again if he gets the chance. We all know what's important to Donald Trump, and it's not the American people. It's Donald John Trump. And anyway, that's the news summaries, and now I want to get to the newsmakers. And one of the most interesting newsmaker clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows this morning was from the husband of senior counsel to the president, Kellyanne Conway, George Conway. And this clip I'm going to show you from CNN's State of the Union. Jake Tapper gets him to talk about first why it is he's disappointed in the Trump Republicans. And then by the end of this clip, you'll see Jake Tapper mention that, oh, he's Kellyanne Conway's husband, but we all agreed we're not going to talk about that. But if you watch the beginning of his answer to Jake Tapper in this next clip, I've watched it a couple times already, and it seems very clear to me that this is something George Conway has said at home to Kellyanne Conway when he talks about why this is a moment of reckoning for Republicans who are supporting Donald Trump. At the very beginning of this clip, it seems like something that George Conway has said to his spouse, Kellyanne Conway, and you can let me know what you think after we watch that clip together over here.
Able to see it too.
Well, let me ask you a question, because you are a conservative attorney. You have been prominent in Republican legal circles for a long, long time. How do you feel when you see the Republican Party going against these basic rules that you consider to be important?
I'm deeply saddened. It's very upsetting. And this is a moment, I think, of reckoning, not just for the country and for the rule of law and for the Constitution. It's a very specific day of reckoning for the Republican senators who took this oath and the Republican Party generally. Are they going to stand for lies instead of truth? Are they going to stand for gaslighting instead of reality? Are they going to just do the bidding of this one man and put his interests over those of the country? That's what this is about.
But take a listen to what President Trump's defenders are saying, because they are basically saying what President Trump says publicly, which is, it was a perfect call, check the transcript. Here is one of his attorneys.
You've seen the transcripts, which the president released transparently, unprecedentedly. There was no quid pro quo for anything.
Just utterly and completely shameless in light of all of the evidence. And the notion that you can assert that the call, as the president has been doing, is as perfect is crazy. And even the one lawyer, the one law professor who defended the House Republicans' position before the House Judiciary Committee said this morning in an op-ed in the Washington Post, there's no way you can say that call was perfect. And it wasn't. And what you saw that lawyer just do was just ignoring the evidence, ignoring the call that David Holmes heard in the Kiev restaurant where
between Bill Clinton and Gordon Sondland.
You mean Donald Trump and Gordon Sondland?
I'm sorry, between Donald Trump and Gordon Sondland. Yes. Sorry.
And where you could hear, and you can, I can personally attest, you can hear Trump when he's on the phone with somebody sitting next to you.
He's got a big booming voice.
Yes. And he says, "Are they going to do the investigations?" That's all he cared about. And then Holmes asked Sondland, "Well, does the president, care about Ukraine?" And basically, he doesn't give a expletive deleted about Ukraine. Sondland said he only cares about the big things, the things that affect him personally, and that's what this is about. That's what makes this offense, what he did, impeachable, is he wasn't concerned about the interests of the nation. The interests of the nation were clearly in favor of letting that aid go unrestricted. He did it because it was a pressure point to get these guys in Ukraine to do his bidding to help him get reelected.
You just alluded to the fact that you've heard President Trump on the phone, so let me just acknowledge to our viewers that obviously you are Kellyanne Conway's husband. She is a counselor to President Trump, and you've already said...
I don't think you have to be the spouse of a senior administration official to know that he's loud on the phone. But I'm sure many people in CNN probably know that too.
Well, but yes, of course, I can personally attest that that's true. But I will also just say you've already made it clear that that is not a subject that you want to talk about, so I'm not going to waste...
Not particularly.
I'm not going to waste any
I think my views about President Trump and his administration.
But I don't know why that clip kind of paused at the end there, but he said his views about Trump and his administration stand on their own, and then Jake Tapper says, that's why I'm not asking you questions about your wife, Kellyanne Conway. But like I said, if you go back to the beginning of George Conway's answer as to how it's a time of reckoning for Republicans who are supporting Trump, what about truth? Why are you giving up all your principles to support this one man? And sounds like something he might have said inside his marriage. You can let me know what you think down in the comments section. Now, George Conway, there's this theory that the George Conway, Kellyanne Conway marriage is, what they're doing is they're like hedging their bets where she's all in on Trump, but if Trump ends up imploding, as I'm hoping happens based on all the evidence that keeps coming out about his wrongdoing, what's going to be the final straw that breaks the final 30 to 40% of Americans who seem to think that Trump can do no wrong? We can call them the camels, right? Call them the camels so that I can say, what's the straw that's going to break the camel's back? I don't know. I thought maybe when Trump said that he liked people who weren't captured and attacked John McCain, that was going to be the point where Republicans said this guy is too outside the mainstream in terms of the way he talks about people to be a Republican. But that didn't happen. That was way back in 2016, and I'm still waiting for what is going to be the straw that breaks the back of those camels, the Republicans who are not never Trumpers, who seem to be always Trumpers. What is wrong with those people? I'm not saying I know what's wrong with those people, but I know what they're doing is wrong. Supporting this, whatever. Anyway, George Conway represents the never Trumpers, I guess, and I don't know if there's some sort of gambit where he's going to be the never Trumper part of the marriage, and Kellyanne Conway is going to be the always Trumper, and so they've hedged their bets. I don't know. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. But a liberal Democrat, self-professed, according to Alan Dershowitz in his interviews last week, he apparently has thrown in with Donald Trump. And I criticized Fox News Sunday earlier in their news summary for not really showing what the Democrats were saying and concentrating on what the Republicans were saying and burying the lead on their poll about who wants more evidence rather than the 50% of Americans versus 44% who want Trump removed from office. 50% of people in a Fox News poll versus 44% who don't want him removed. 50% do want him removed. That is pretty monumental. That was the buried lead in the Fox News news summary from Kevin Corke, and Chris Wallace. But here at least Chris Wallace does ask Alan Dershowitz both about something I talked about last week. Down in the video description, I have a link to Federalist 65. I even showed a screenshot of it in my commentary talking about Alan Dershowitz last week claiming that a president has to be impeached for a crime, but Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 65 said, no, it's just, abuse of the public trust is an impeachable offense. And Chris Wallace asks Alan Dershowitz about that in this week's interview, and then also about what Alan Dershowitz said back in 1998 in the Clinton impeachment, and I will talk about that with you after we watch that clip together over here.
Enemies would be a criteria, and it's not. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we have limited time, and I want to talk about the framers because you keep bringing them up.
Right, I do.
In Federalist 65, Alexander Hamilton, certainly one of the framers, argues that a criminal offense is not essential to impeachment. Let me put up what he says. The subjects of its jurisdiction are those offenses which proceed from the misconduct of public men, or in other words, from the abuse or violation of some public trust. Another founder, George Mason, brought up the case of a former British official in India who had been accused of mismanagement. Again, in neither of these cases is there any mention of breaking a specific criminal statute.
Well, let's start with mismanagement. Yes, that was a criteria in England, and that was rejected by the United States. That was one of the elements that was introduced by the framers, and it was rejected by votes like 9 to 2,
But that's not true.
etc.
George Mason was one of the people who came up with high crimes and misdemeanors.
I understand,
and
but he
meant
rejected
it to include things like misconduct, abuse of power, and then you have Alexander Hamilton, who talks specifically about misconduct and abuse.
I will spend some time on the Hamilton matter in my talk. When Clinton was being impeached, people who opposed Clinton's impeachment cited the same quote as saying, no, that shows you have to narrow it, not broaden it. What he was saying is the subjects of the jurisdiction, namely high crimes, misdemeanors, treason, and bribery, those are crimes that involve public people. They are political in nature. They are abuse of power. Hamilton wasn't trying to expand the criteria from the constitutional criteria. He was actually trying to contract it, arguing that, in fact, in addition to having crimes like treason and bribery, you have to show that it involves a breach of public trust. I will lay all this out tomorrow very carefully and in a very scholarly way.
But I do want to point out that we want to listen to a couple of the people who, you bring up the Clinton impeachment trial, who argued exactly the opposite of what you're arguing today. Let's listen to them.
Doesn't even have to be a crime. It's just when you start using your office and you're acting in a way that hurts people, you've committed a high crime.
It certainly doesn't have to be a crime. If you have somebody who completely corrupts the office of president and who abuses trust and who poses great danger to our liberty, you don't need a technical crime. Well, you don't need a technical crime. You don't need a technical
Professor
crime.
Dershowitz, let me ask you about this, because when you argued that case, that what didn't have to be a crime in the Clinton impeachment, I find it very hard to believe that you had not studied the only other presidential impeachment in history, which was the Johnson impeachment. So suddenly discovering that the key issue is what Justice Curtis argued in 1868. You're too good a lawyer not to have studied that back in 1998.
Well, remember, in 1998, the issue was not whether you need a crime, because President Clinton was charged with a crime. He was charged with perjury.
We just put the sound right up where you said it doesn't have to be a crime.
Well, I did say that then, and then I've done all the extensive research. I've been immersing myself in dusty old books, and I've concluded that, no, it has to be a crime. It doesn't have to be a technical crime. Now, remember that Congressman Nadler changed his view. Congressman, then Senator Schumer, changed his view. Larry Tribe, back in 1998, said a sitting president couldn't be prosecuted. Now, once Trump got elected, he said a sitting president can be prosecuted. That's what scholars do. That's what academics do. We do more research.
It's also what lawyers do, which is depending on the facts of the case and the side they're arguing, they find an argument to make.
Well, I made this argument way, way, way before I was put on the, given the role to argue the constitutional case. I made that argument in an article in the Wall Street Journal. I made that
Professor,
argument.
I want to ask you one last question, because we are running out of time. A tape has just been.
And they talk about the Parnas tape there, and I'll talk about the Parnas tape a little more in a minute. But I thought that Fox News Sunday and Chris Wallace there did a better job than they did in their news summary of being fair and balanced. But the Dershowitz answer there, especially his claim that Federalist 65 was supposed to narrow the public, that treason and bribery were narrowed by the words abuse of public trust to, oh, it's not just any treason or bribery, but it's treason or bribery that involves abuse of the public trust. Well, can you come up with any examples of treason or bribery that don't involve the abuse of the public trust? That's a pretty nonsensical argument. And by the way, you just saw Alan Dershowitz. Here, I'll play the beginning of that Saturday Night Live clip again, and you'll see what I mean, that Jon Lovitz is not really doing an Alan Dershowitz impression over here.
Yes, hello everyone. It's I, Alan Dershowitz. It's wonderful to be here, because I'm not welcome anywhere else. There's a lot of haters out there for no good reason. But like I said to my client and my dear friend, Jeffrey Epstein, haters gonna hate.
So, yeah, not really an Alan Dershowitz impression, more like a Jon Lovitz performance, which, like I said, if they'd played that up and done the whole Tommy Flanagan, my wife Morgan Fairchild thing, the liar character, that would have been better than what they did. But anyway, I have a few more newsmaker clips, 4 more that I want to show you. The first of which is Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, who was on a couple of the news programs trying to defend the Republican side. And here he is. You remember from the CNN State of the Union news summary, it ended with this Trump tweet attacking Adam Schiff and saying that he hasn't paid the consequences for what he's done yet. Like trying to protect the United States from our criminal president, I guess, is something that he has to pay the consequences for. But James Lankford is not offended by that, even though he was offended by the whole claim that Adam Schiff made in his Friday night summary that I didn't show you, where he said that he mentioned the CBS News report that he hoped wasn't true, that an aide to President Trump had told Republicans that if they voted against Trump, their heads would be on a spike. Although I think Jake Tapper says heads on a stick, and then James Lankford does just really doesn't deal with the facts in the clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch together, starting with the end of the Jake Tapper CNN State of the Union news summary I showed you earlier, where he reads this Trump tweet over here.
Adam Schiff is a corrupt politician and probably a very sick man. He has not paid the price yet for what he has done to our country, unquote. Joining me now, Republican Senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. Senator, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Glad to be with you.
So, I mean, that tweet from the president, he said Schiff has not paid the price yet. I mean, Adam Schiff has been getting death threats, sources tell me. Do you condemn what President Trump tweeted?
I don't think the president's trying to be able to do a death threat here or do some sort of intimidation.
He has not paid the price yet?
It's no different than what Adam Schiff and what Speaker Pelosi were saying, that the folks will be paying a price at the ballot box, or that they'll pay a price for this in the future, or the people will hold them accountable for that. So you look at both of them, I think, the same way. Both of them are saying, hey, the American people will speak on this.
Well, you know, what's interesting is you were very offended, as were other senators from Friday night, when Schiff, on the floor of the Senate, argued that, well, he was quoting a CBS News report that had a confidant of President Trump saying that Republicans would pay a price, that it would be your heads on a stick. And he was quoting the CBS News report, quoting of a Trump confidant, but you were offended by that.
So the offensive part there is he was saying the president had communicated to us that our heads will be on a pike if we oppose him. And all of us looked at each other and said, we've heard no such comment from the president. We felt no such pressure from the president. That was the offensive part. It's not that he's quoting some unnamed source and some confidential whatever from CBS News on it. It's that the implication was we've all been sent a message, And we all spoke to him pretty clearly to say that's not true.
But Schiff was quoting a CBS News report. Why would you be mad at Schiff as opposed to this Trump confidant who said that this message had been conveyed to you?
No, Schiff's message was that this message had been passed on to us.
That's what the CBS News report was.
Correct, but Schiff is also saying here's this unnamed story. This is a sideshow on the whole thing. We were just offended in that he's ending his closing arguments by saying, you'll have to vote the way you are because the president is saying to you, I'll put your head on a pike if we don't. And we all know that's not true.
All right, I want to button this up, but just what do you say to somebody who says, President Trump is saying that Adam Schiff needs to pay a price. This is in the midst of Adam Schiff getting death threats. You're not offended by that. You think it's just
I just don't think it's a death threat. I don't think he's encouraging a death threat.
But people who are supporters of the president have heard his rhetoric and then actually tried to bomb and kill politicians and the media. I mean, that's happened.
Right. We've also had individuals go up to a baseball game.
Yeah, horrible.
And shoot Republicans.
Awful.
And walk up and say,
Completely,
is this where the Republicans are? I'm going to go fire at them.
Yeah.
So to be able to say the president's trying to be able to spur this on, and be able to say Democrats are trying to spur on the killing.
I guess I don't understand why you're offended at what Adam Schiff said.
No, because I think it's political. I think what he's saying is political. What the president's saying is he's going to be held to a price. And I'm offended only because Adam Schiff believes that the only reason that we act the way that we do is because the president's going to put our head on a pike. He's invalidating all of our motives. He's saying you're going to ignore all the facts, and you're only doing this because you're afraid of the president, rather than we'll actually be fair in the process and actually look at the facts. That was before we had heard any of the facts from the White House team. The White House team is now, for the first time, had an opportunity to be able to cross-examine and bring out more detail on this point.
Okay, so let's...
So did you buy all that? So that's the last Republican I'm going to show you. I showed you George Conway. I showed you Alan Dershowitz. I showed you James Lankford. And, of course, I showed you all the news summaries that seem to heavily favor the Republican arguments for reasons that I don't quite understand. Before I get to the last three clips, all of which are Democrats, Jason Crow and Adam Schiff and Amy Klobuchar, I do want to thank my Super Chat contributors so far, Exodus 21V20 and Lulu Girl here. Here's what I have. And Exodus asks if the Democrats can demand that Chief Justice John Roberts get Mitch McConnell to recuse himself. And, you know, actually there is the ability to object during the arguments that no one seems to be using that happened in previous impeachments. I don't know why that's not been happening, but in terms of getting Mitch McConnell to recuse himself and getting John Roberts to rule on it, well, the Democrats could make a motion, but remember last Tuesday they made like 11 motions for documents and witnesses, and every time they made one of those motions, Mitch McConnell moved to table the motion, and it just requires a majority, never even gets to John Roberts if 51, and they were all 53-47 except for one that was 52-48. I think Susan Collins voted for the motion that said that Democrats should get more than an hour to respond to the motions that were supposed to be made on Wednesday and didn't. Well, there were no motions, but anyway, that's getting deep into the weeds. But to answer Exodus's question, Democrats could try to make a motion to get John Roberts to do whatever, like Chuck Schumer tried to get John Roberts to be the one to rule on the relevance of witnesses, but all it takes is 51 votes from Republicans to table that motion, and then it goes to legislative limbo and never gets heard from again, I guess. And anyway, that is my answer to that question from the Super Chat contributors, and I appreciate people who support my videos that way. Also, at a link down in the video description, you can become one of my monthly patrons on Patreon at the At the $5 level, you get this hashtag LiberalViewer weatherproof vinyl sticker. At the $10 level, you get this sticker plus this pocket constitution from the ACLU, so you can follow along in the demise of our democratic republic as to what parts of the Constitution are being trashed along the way, or I don't know, maybe it will turn out better than all that. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. And now I'm going to get to the last three clips. First, I wanted to show Jason Crow, the Democrat from Colorado. I was talking about him earlier. I think he was made a manager to put pressure on Cory Gardner, since local news in Colorado will cover his arguments. And he was over on CBS News' Face the Nation, talking to Margaret Brennan about this whole controversy about how Democrats may have lost the swing votes they needed by saying mean things about Trump, which is pretty ridiculous if you've been watching the previous clips. But here's Jason Crow talking about it this morning over here.
What they're asking for here.
So on the numbers, you need 4 Republicans to vote alongside Democrats to get this approved. New evidence, new witnesses. There's been a lot of criticism because that margin is so narrow that you needed to really persuade those 4. 2 of those names, Senators Murkowski and Collins, have said that they took umbrage at some of the presentation over the 3 days. There was complaints about repetition, complaints about style, and specifically language used by Chairmans Nadler and Schiff. Do you think Democrats overplayed their hand at all?
No, I don't. I mean, listen, the manager team is a very diverse team and background and experience. And, you know, we make cases in different ways. We have different styles, and that's fine. But the larger point is that this isn't about any one person. This isn't about, you know, how people are feeling about this issue. Everybody sitting in that chamber has taken an oath to be an impartial juror. We've all taken oaths to be members of Congress, to put the Constitution, to put the country ahead of our own personal interests and well-being. You know, my last comments on Friday night when I closed my presentation was about the nature of public service.
Yeah.
And I wanted to end on that because, you know, by definition, public service is about serving the country and the community and not yourself. So this is not about any one person.
You reject those criticisms, though. You don't think that they are actually going to play a factor in persuading votes?
I think it's a distraction from the overall issue.
Okay.
You know, we presented overwhelming evidence of the president's misconduct. That's what this is about. It's about the president coercing an ally at war to help him with a political campaign. This is not about any personality issues.
So one of the things you focused in on was the...
So that's a clip of Jason Crow. I think he did a pretty good job. I mean, not as great a job as Adam Schiff, or not even as good a job as Hakeem Jeffries, who I thought was another standout House manager. Jerry Nadler, I didn't think did as good a job. Jason Crow, pretty good. So Lofgren did a pretty good job also. Anyway, I want to show you 2 more clips. The next one is actually an Adam Schiff clip where he responds. If you've been reading Donald Trump's tweets obsessively today, he did put out a tweet where he criticized Chuck Todd's interview of Adam Schiff. It says something about, and I was going to take a screenshot, but I didn't have time, and something about sleepy eye. Chuck Todd didn't ask Adam Schiff about why he made up the words of my perfect conversation with President Zelensky or something like that. Well, you'll see in this next clip, sleepy eye Chuck Todd actually does ask Adam Schiff both about the paraphrasing he did of the July 25th call back when he did his House Intelligence Committee hearings on the shakedown of Vladimir Zelensky by Donald Trump, but then also asks him about this head on a pike comment. And I think Adam Schiff gives a good answer to both questions. Also, sorry, not just, he doesn't mention the head on the pike comment. I was just looking at my notes. He mentions something the president's defense team brought up in their couple hours of their defense on Saturday, where they say and I hear this all the time from people on the right, that Adam Schiff has no credibility, he's a liar because he said there was this direct evidence of Russian collusion, and there was direct evidence of Russian collusion. There was, of course, the Donald Trump Jr. meeting with Russian agents in Trump Tower. There was what Roger Stone did to coordinate the leaks of Russian hacked material with WikiLeaks, and that's all in the Mueller report, and Mueller never said there was no evidence of collusion, and that's something Adam Schiff explains in this penultimate news clip before I get to the Amy Klobuchar clip. This is Adam Schiff talking to Chuck Todd about how he doesn't feel bad about these sore points he's created with Republicans about some things he's said over here.
Vladimir Putin, I wouldn't want to be making that argument.
You were also a star of their defense as well, including, I think, an exchange you and I had about the Russian collusion issue, as well as your opening statement on the phone call. Any regrets about either of those two moments yourself?
No, and I'm glad you asked the question about collusion, because again, they may be perpetuating the president's talking points, but they've got it exactly wrong. Bob Mueller did not find that there was no collusion. In fact, in the first couple pages of the report, he said we don't address that issue. What we found is we could not prove criminal conspiracy beyond a reasonable doubt. But nonetheless, what he did find is that the Russians offered the president dirt on his opponent, and they said they would love to have it. Literally put it in writing. But the more important point, Chuck, and the relevance of the Mueller report to all this, because we're not trying the Mueller report, is that this isn't the first time that he invited foreign interference. That is the background of the current effort to get a foreign nation to help him cheat in an election. You can't say it's an accident when you repeatedly are seeking foreign help, and in this case, we proved overwhelmingly that they were leveraging hundreds of millions of dollars that Ukraine needed in military aid and a deeply sought-after Oval Office meeting to coerce Ukraine into helping him cheat.
President's defense team also brought up the FISA issue, sort of in general, because there was a report this week.
And if you want to see Adam Schiff talk about the FISA issue, you can watch all of Meet the Press at a link down in the video description. But I think Adam Schiff did a good job of defending himself against the lied about Russia collusion thing. And I heard that from several different Republicans on the pundit panels. And I generally don't take pundit clips. But the final news clip I want to show you before I finish up the show with, of course, the Dash and Sandy clip, the dandy clip, as some people like to call it, is Amy Klobuchar. And after I show this Amy Klobuchar clip, I will talk briefly about what I think about what's going on with the Democratic candidates. You know, it's only 8 days to the Iowa caucuses, and I think that was in one of the news summaries. I think it might have even been the Fox News summary, because Chris Wallace was broadcasting from Iowa. But here's Amy Klobuchar answering a question from George Stephanopoulos on This Week from ABC about, responding to what James Lankford said. I showed you a James Lankford clip earlier, not from ABC, but here Amy Klobuchar is talking about, well, if there aren't the votes to remove Trump, should we censure him? And instead of answering that question, she talks about how she really sticks to the important Democratic talking points, and it makes me think maybe I made a mistake and, remove Trump isn't the Democratic talking point this week. It's evidence, witnesses, documents, and Amy Klobuchar is pretty much focused in on those talking points. Get the men in the room, which makes even more sense after this breaking news about how John Bolton has circulated a draft of his book where he says that Trump in August definitely said that he wanted to hold up the military aid to Ukraine until he got them to do the investigation into Democrats. So Amy Klobuchar gets that right, at least in the final news clip of the night over here.
And we know that.
You just heard Senator Lankford back up the president's team's contention that he did absolutely nothing wrong, suggesting that foreign interference in elections happens all the time. Which gets to the question, it still appears that the president's heading towards an acquittal in the Senate. Should the Senate move to censure, or at least try and censure, President Trump if he is indeed acquitted?
We are not at that point, George. Right now, what I want my colleagues to do is to join us in getting the witnesses. I literally don't know how you can sit over there and listen. Even when you hear the president's lawyers, they raise fact questions. They say, well, the facts aren't there. I want to hear from the men, to quote the Founding Fathers musical, to hear from the men in the room where it happens. That is people like Mr. Bolton and Mick Mulvaney. All of these signs point to things and discussions that they had with the President of the United States. And all we are asking for right now is 4 witnesses. 0 witnesses plus 0 evidence equals 0 justice. You can't have a trial without the witnesses. However they vote, whatever they choose to do when the evidence comes in, they cannot go down in history as the people that blocked the truth from coming forward, because eventually it will come forward.
Senator Klobuchar, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, George. It was great to be.
And eventually it will come forward, and 0 witnesses and 0 evidence does equal 0 justice. As a former criminal defense attorney, a former trial attorney, I know that a trial does include witnesses and documents, and the Republicans in the Senate, if they're going to try to finish this whole thing up this week with no witnesses, no documents, very little evidence, supposedly exonerating Trump when all this evidence is coming out day by day, I think, like I said, it could be a trap for the Republicans. It could be the best outcome for the Democrats, that the Republicans do this whitewash, this cover-up of Trump's wrongdoing, and then it comes out more and more, and then Trump is not only removed in the November 2020 election by the voters, but the Republicans lose the majority in the Senate, because the 53 Republican senators, Susan Collins, Cory Gardner, Lisa Murkowski, Tom Tillis, all the Republicans who are up for election, and not all those Republicans, but there are multiple Republicans up for election in purple states, and they're going to lose if they vote to whitewash this whole Trump scheme to coerce Ukraine into cheating, helping Trump cheat in the 2020 election and holding up military aid, etc., to get them to do it, and then more and more evidence of it comes out. So hopefully that's what's going to happen. I think, like I said, it's better for Democrats for Trump not to be removed, but for Republicans to be put on the record supporting Trump in his wrongdoing as more and more evidence of it comes out. That's the trap that Nancy Pelosi set for the Republicans by sending these impeachment articles over to the Senate, and maybe Mitch McConnell will not be the majority leader after the November 2020 election. We can only hope. Right, Sandy? Sandy's right here next to me. And before I finish up, I do want to show you the Dash and Sandy clip, the dandy clip, if you will. And, it seems like this whole Senate impeachment trial is going to be settled by partisanship. Some people think partisanship is natural, that Democrats and Republicans have to fight like cats and dogs, or, here you'll see Dash the cat and Sandy the dog fight so little that Dash can come into the room, walk right by Sandy, and Sandy basically doesn't move at all. So partisanship is not what we're doomed to. If they're going to fight like cats and dogs, here's how cats and dogs act in the real world with this Dash and Sandy dandy clip to finish up the show over here. So I guess you don't have to be partisan all the time. You don't have to fight like cats and dogs if you're just a dog who is lying down lazily and doesn't care about the cats. That's, well, I don't know. You can draw whatever conclusion you want from that clip, but that's the last clip. I have to finish up the show here. I appreciate all of you who showed up to give me your commentary while I was doing the live show. The Super Chat contributors, of course, my patrons on Patreon at the link down in the video description, who I can count on every month to give me my monthly support. You can also give me a direct contribution on PayPal if you like what I'm doing. Like I said, at the $5 level on Patreon or on PayPal, you'll get this sticker. At the $10 level, you'll get this sticker and the Constitution. There's also the YouTube join button down there you can click on if you want to support the channel that way. And anyway, that's the end of the Sunday live clip roundup. I hope you appreciate the 9 or 10 hours I spent this Sunday and every Sunday for the last 353 Sundays picking out these clips, preparing them, and giving you my criticism and commentary. You can support my channel, like I said, through the ways I just described, or just by giving me a supportive comment and a thumbs up if you like what I'm doing. And until next week, or until I have some reason to upload an edited, produced video in the middle of the week, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.